Hello, my name is Alan Young and I'm here at the 40th anniversary meeting of the British Association for Psychopharmacology, currently being held in Cambridge, and I'm in discussion with Professor Gavin Reynolds. Professor Reynolds, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off by just asking you to outline your current position, roles and activities.
My current position is a slightly unusual one in that I've taken early retirement. I was previously Chair of Neuroscience at Queen's University Belfast. I'm now back where I previously lived in Sheffield, have an honorary appointment at Sheffield Hallam University where I have a small research group mainly focused on DNA methylation and pharmacogenetics. And I also have positions in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, visiting professorship at Thai University, at a Malaysian university, and also in China. And most recently a visiting professorship at King's College, London.
Which I must say King's were all delighted about. Now, do you go out to Southeast Asia? Do you run labs there? Do you have active collaborations, or is it teaching? Or
I do have active collaborations on a fairly small scale. In Malaysia, there is a pharmacogenetics group with which I'm providing some supervision for students. And I do much the same with a neuroscience group at Naresuan University in Thailand. And that's fairly productive. They're beginning to get some interesting results out. And in China, I've had a long-standing collaboration which has provided samples for our own pharmacogenetic studies.
So what's DNA methylation got to do with psychopharmacology?
Well, if I could answer that simply, I probably wouldn't need to do much more work. I think DNA methylation is yet another form of variation in the human genome, and that variation through polymorphisms that people have been studying for 20 years now has told us a lot about disease. It's beginning to tell us about the differences between individuals in terms of drug response and levels of side effects.
And might this be a target for treatment strategies? Might we be able to change the DNA methylation and therefore change the response to drugs from no response to good response?
I think that's going to be quite a big step. I can't immediately see that drugs influencing DNA methylation will have such specific effects. It may be that they do have a general effects. I think more it's helping us identify targets.
I see. So stratifying, selecting groups will be more likely to respond.
Indeed, and also focusing on receptors or enzymes that may themselves be druggable.
So if I can just take you back, I mean, obviously you've been very involved in the world of neuropsychopharmacology for a long time. How did you get into that? Where did it all start? Where did it all begin?
I suppose it started probably at about the age of 10 when I decided I wanted to do chemistry. I wanted to study chemistry, and throughout my secondary school education I was a chemist. I really was interested in nothing else. I went to university to study chemistry, and after 2 years I found, well, actually chemistry is very interesting at one level, but I'm beginning to find it a bit boring, and I'd like to apply it to something interesting. And then I got a PhD position looking at amine excretion in phenylketonuria, which led me to interest in amine neurotransmitters in the brain, which led me to an interest in schizophrenia. And then I got a postdoc position with Merton Sandler in London.
Of course, yes.
And that was to study schizophrenia and its biochemistry. And I've gone on from there, really, focused always on schizophrenia, neurotransmitters, and that inevitably led into understanding how the antipsychotic drugs worked.
Now, you're a past president of the BAP, of the British Association for Psychopharmacology, but can you tell us when you first got involved?
I probably got involved as a postdoc with Merton Sandler. So he was involved in the original setting up of the BAP, and certainly ensured that all his students and postdocs were members. So it's probably my first meeting would have been about 1978.
Right. So that's pretty close to the beginning of the...
Pretty early on, yes. And I've been coming, well, on a fairly regular basis ever since then.
And how have you seen the association change over the years?
Well, I can remember thinking that there was this bunch of old fogies who seemed to run psychopharmacology, and maybe the young people here now think the same thing, but it's the BAP certainly expanded, and I think it does have a better focus on younger people. Yeah, that's clearly an important focus. It's probably diversified to include more biological psychiatry, and inevitably it's gone with the times and embraced the new technologies and got into psychiatric genetics and so on.
Imaging and so on.
Imaging and
the BAP from the beginning was always tripartite. It was basic scientists, clinical scientists, and industry people. But repeatedly we hear that there wasn't really any divide, that people would have common interests and really common language across these three different domains. Has that been your experience? Has it been fruitful to collaborate in that way?
That has been my experience, and I have always worked closely myself with psychiatrists, although not medically qualified. So I think that is something that the BAP has tried to foster, this integration between what are sometimes seen as separate disciplines, but I think there's still a way to go yet. We're still dividing people up into preclinical and clinical, and I think we need to embrace the idea of, we talk about translation, but there are lots of people doing translational psychopharmacology, and that's more important by far than labeling people as preclinical or clinical.
Absolutely. In the last few years, we have seen some very big pharmaceutical companies really move out of the field of psychopharmacology, mental health, psychiatry, call it what you will. We still have a very active representation from industry and society, but there are challenges to industry not being so involved anymore. What's your take on that?
I must admit I felt very depressed about that a couple of years ago. I think I've come to learn that industry are, firstly, they're not pulling out completely, but they're adapting their model. They're adapting their model so that much of the research that might have been done in-house is now being done in collaboration with academia.
Which might well be a good thing for us.
Which may well be a very good thing, yes. So I'm beginning to be much more optimistic about it.
And so you're optimistic about the future of the field? What do you think is going to happen next for the whole of psychopharmacology?
I think it's always hard to predict the future, but I think we are developing a better understanding of the gap between how drugs are affecting the brain and what is wrong with the brain in these various diseases. So we're still quite away from a rational treatment or rational approaches to modifying the pathology of schizophrenia or depression, but I think we're beginning to close that gap. So I think that's a positive thing.
This is the 40th anniversary meeting. It's been a tremendously successful meeting, both in terms of science, but also we've got a very strong representation from young researchers. What's your view about the future of the BAP?
Well, inevitably, the future of any society is in the young people who join and develop with it and allow it to develop with them when they can influence it. So certainly, I see the young postdocs and PhD students and trainees are going to influence the way in which the BAP develops. And I think over the past 20 years probably, we've been very open and encouraged young psychopharmacologists to be involved. So yeah, we have a lot of initiatives that promote young people's psychopharmacology. We have a postdoc symposium today, for example.
Professor Gavin Reynolds, thank you very much.
Thank you.